Hi, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you that has tuned into today's webinar. We hope you are doing well at home or even office. My name is Nick Shafika, and I am a Senior Associate of the Corporate and Government Advisory of ZICO, and one of the founding members of the ZICO Labs. I am the moderator for today's webinar. So this webinar is brought to you by ZICO Labs team. So I'm sure many of you wonder, what is ZICO Labs? So ZICO Labs is actually ZICO Law's regional corporate social responsibility initiative to assist the startup and scale-up ecosystem, initiated by our very own regional managing partner, Ms. Hanim Hamza, and led by our partners, Izaha and Filin. So ZICO Labs collaborates with intermediaries such as Endeavor, MDEC, and others to provide startups and scale-up access to legal assistance. So we are constantly looking out for partners, so please do reach out to us if you're interested. Recently, during the MCO period, we have launched virtual legal clinics to provide preliminary legal information to help startups and also scale up with their legal problem online. But for today's topic, we'll be conducting a webinar. The topic is regulatory trends and opportunities for startups and scale up post-movement control. So this webinar features a panel of speakers from ZICO Law, Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center MAGIC, as well as Futurise Sdn, where they will be sharing their perspective on emerging industry growth areas together with their corresponding regulatory framework in order to better assist small businesses to prepare for life post-MCO. So we would like to remind you that you can ask questions by typing in the Q&A box, and we will respond to your questions at the end of the session. But if we don't have enough time, we will actually reply to you by email. So do leave your name and also your email address in the Q&A box. So the first speaker of the day is Izaha, who is a partner in the Corporate and Government Advisory Practice Group at ZICO. His practice group focuses in the area of law reform. Izaha is also the co-lead of ZICO Labs. He has worked with local and international intermediaries in addition to government agencies to support and provide legal assistance to emerging entities. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Izaha.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Izaha, and as Nick has introduced me already, I'm not going to go into detail on my background. I hope you are all safe and well at home right now during this conditional movement control period. As the title suggests, what I would like to talk about today is regulatory trends for startups and scale-ups post-movement control. I think we're quite fortunate that we also have two distinguished speakers from the Malaysian government agency that will also give a perspective in terms of trends that are happening and opportunities that we have for startups and scale-ups right now. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this slide aims to basically set the stage or set the scene in terms of what we've seen in terms of the movement control order and the COVID-19 pandemic. So in Malaysia, as we know, the Prime Minister announced almost overnight at 10 p.m. on March 16 that we would be heading for a movement control order that was supposed to last for 2 weeks. So businesses, if you can recall, you literally almost had only 1 day to prepare. So I don't know, a lot of people went grocery shopping, but others, they'll be concerned in terms of how would they operate within the next 2 weeks. So even organizations such as us, we stayed in, we prepped, and we got ready so that we could ensure our operations will continue during this 2 weeks period. So as we know, what actually transpired is that the MCO was extended for 3 more times, for a further 3 periods from 25th March, 10th April, and also 23rd April, which is supposed to last until 12th May. We don't know whether it's going to go further beyond that, but that's what it is right now. But the impact of the MCO is something that we could not have foreseen, the magnitude and the economic impact to startups and scale-up. So if you look at the data that we have right here in terms of the slides, this was a survey that was done by MAGIC during the first 2 weeks of the MCO, which actually covered about 280 something startups. And this was the information that they relayed. So if you look at the information here, the numbers are very high. About 80% were concerned about decline in sales. 64% reported that their revenue had dipped. 62% had also sought financial assistance, and around 75% were unsure of what government incentives were there out there. And I think at the end of the day, I think it was expected that 40% of startups would not survive until May. And bear in mind, these were statistics that were taken early on. Next slide, please. So if we looked at the next slide, during the MCO, I think ZICO as a firm, we have been very active in conducting among others, various webinars, publishing content, and providing legal updates. But that's what the firm has been doing collectively. And at our level at ZICO Labs, we've also been reaching out to the startup and scale-up ecosystem by doing these virtual advisory clinics or virtual legal clinics, where we've been giving preliminary legal advice by working with our intermediary partners. If I can share, a lot of the concerns are quite similar with normal businesses. I think a major concern is always funding, relating to force majeure provisions and also relating to tenancies. But another thing that the startups and scale-ups told us is if we could also talk about what would be the new norm from them. So what would be features of the new startup that we can look at post MCO, and also with the emergence of these new archetype type of startups, there would also be regulations that will affect them. So what would be these post-MCO regulation that they would need to consider? So that's where we got the idea to do this webinar, to look at these features. So after doing these virtual legal clinics, we came to a few themes, which is outlined here. As you can see, I think it's quite common for several businesses to be impacted in this way, but the discussion today would focus mostly from a startup scale-up perspective on these issues. So if I can just read them very quickly: work from home, WFH, e-wallets, delivery services, online businesses, and technology. Next slide, please. So going to the next slide is basically the first theme, which I think has been trending throughout this MCO period. Everyone has been using the acronym WFH, and now everyone knows what it means. If you look at the survey conducted by recommend.my, that's the second most important thing that people have done to adapt, is basically move their organizational business to operate from home instead of from their traditional workplaces. And if you look at the traditional makeup of startups and scale-ups, as you can see, these businesses are already in the past, before this was trending during the recent movement control period, would have already been working from home. And this is, as you can see at the top left, there's some data showing in terms of the growth in number and size of co-working spaces. I think it's doubled almost in the last year that we have in Malaysia. So these businesses would already be traditionally working from home. In terms of regulatory considerations, what we think is important when we speak to them is that when you work from home, your legal obligations, employment obligations still apply. So for example, your Employment Act obligations still apply, whereas where you need to ensure that people still conform to normal working hours. So you can't have people working beyond the prescribed time under the Employment Act. So that's one of the legal requirements that actually carries from the office to the home. And I think when we start working from home now, everybody realizes there's been a blur between work and private time. The second issue that also comes up is in relation to occupational safety, because occupational safety also applies when you carry from your traditional office to your home space. So the employer is still under obligation to ensure the work space is safe for these employees. So employers need to look at coming up with guidelines for work from home to ensure that even though these boundaries are blurred, but you still can comply with your legal obligations. I think that the new norm now, a lot of people have been saying work from home equals to work all the time, which cannot be the case in law. Now, if we talk about regulatory trends, I think regulators are quick to adapt to this. They realize that, look, a lot of businesses are multinational, a lot of businesses are cross-border. So in that sense, since businesses are not locally based in Malaysia only, I've engaged with a lot of regulators who've actually talked about the fact that they're dispensing with physical office requirements or information when you are doing submissions. So for example, recently when we were engaging the Ministry of Tourism and they were coming up with guidelines for online travel agencies, they realized that there's no need to actually have a physical office in Malaysia, so long as these companies already incorporate in Malaysia. So as long as they have incorporated in Malaysia, they don't physically need to have a registered office anymore. So I think regulators are quite quickly adopting to these trends. Next slide, please. So the next issue that I would like to talk about is online business, which I think has been really expanding in the last few months. If you realize, a lot of the brick and mortar businesses such as supermarket, retail, newspapers have closed down. Mall occupancy is quite low, and also because given the movement control, everything is online now. since everything has gone online, I think the data from Commerce Asia shows an increase of 800 to 900% in online sales. Quite interesting. There were the top 3 things that people were buying were frying pans, latex gloves, and ladies' underwear. I'm not sure why, but the increase has been substantial. So everything is essentially moving online. So in terms of the regulatory framework there, we have the Consumer Protection Act, which automatically provides protection for online transaction, which is done through electronic means. And also the regulations under the Consumer Protection Act covers online marketplaces. So online marketplaces have a duty to ensure certain standards and certain information is provided to consumers. And there's also a special tribunal set up under the legislation to protect consumers. In terms of the regulatory trends, what we see is increased move to regulate businesses. I think a lot of businesses are not sure when they actually have to require with SSM. This has been quite a gray area because SSM has a Registration of Business Act, which requires entities operating for profit or gain to register. But the problem is there's no clarity in terms of what constitutes gain. So in that sense, SSM has come up to say that they will develop a guideline to ensure or to clarify when these businesses need to register. Sometimes businesses only, for example, trade one-off. So in that sense, they would not be sure whether they actually need to register or not. Because if it's something that they will do continually, yes, they would have to register. But if it's only a one-off activity, there's no point in actually registering. So the next point on that is in terms of e-commerce platforms itself. And I think we actually see a regulatory trend to regulate these people. I think if you look at the trend so far, we've had e-hailing platforms being regulated. We've had now also the Airbnb platforms being regulated. So all these platforms will also, I think, in due course be regulated by the respective ministries. Next slide, please. So I think the next trend or theme when we speak to startups and scale-ups is, of course, in terms of payment, in terms of e-wallet. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of concern in terms of the health issues and whether touching physical money is actually safe. I think obviously because it exchanges in so many hands. I mean, not only money, but people have been talking about food delivery, people have been talking about parcel. So I think that has actually spurred the growth of electronic payments. I think in Malaysia, we are quite mature in that area. There's a flurry of options. We have various e-wallets, which I'm not going to name, but there's so many in the market out there. In terms of the regulatory considerations, I think that the framework is already there. Bank Negara has actually come up with the appropriate framework and recognize electronic money as a legal form of tender under the Financial Services Act and the Islamic Financial Services Act. So we have the relevant law out there as well. I think at the moment there's about 44 e-money operators. So we have a lot in the market as well. But moving forward, I think what we see or what we have spoken about is the movement to actually create this digital banking license or digital banking framework, which was announced last year by Bank Negara. And they've also issued an exposure draft on the guideline that they have, which has actually been extended from 30th April to 30th June because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in due course, they intend to issue at least 5 digital banking licenses. If you don't know what digital banking license is, it's basically banks without any physical presence. So they are also operating online, no physical presence. I think that's an emerging theme that we're seeing right now, post movement control and post COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Another observation that we also see is the adoption of technology. I think this is very much consistent with the government's move in the Industrial Revolution 4.0, RR 4.0. Also, if you follow the news, the vaccine for COVID-19 is only expected to come out sometime next year, or unless you listen to Trump, he said sometime end of this year. And I think the startups that we have spoken to, have shown that they are, and I think it's not peculiar to them, but most businesses have shown that they are using a lot of these tools. But what I think is peculiar to them is they emphasize that of course, they're using a lot of the free tools. I think if you look at the data, there's been significant information showing that the Zoom app has skyrocketed to almost 200 million daily users from I think 10 million when it first came out. So that's a substantial increase during this period. And I think if you look at the chart on the left, there's a trend showing in the last 3 years that when startups are interviewed, they invest heavily in technology. They note that investing in technology has actually enhanced or increased their profitability. And also, they also recognize that one of the emerging themes is the cybersecurity threats. So that's what the chart on the left says. Now, we talk about regulatory considerations in this area. I think it's quite piecemeal in that sense. There's no one actually monitoring hacking, or monitoring the dissemination of various malicious files or web links. I think someone just shared to me they were in a video conference. It was a small, close quarters one attended by 4 people discussing religious matters, and someone just came in and scribbled on the screen. I'm not sure how someone can do that, but those are the reality of the hacks that can happen when we use these unsecured platforms. So the regulators or the regulatory framework that we have right now is MCMC, of course, which generally regulates communication and multimedia, but a lot of their actions are incident-based, which means someone has to report, and thereafter only people will go after this and make the investigation. So if there's no reporting, then you can't stop them before. In terms of the other government agency, we also have Cybersecurity Malaysia, but Cybersecurity Malaysia is dealing with a lot of cybersecurity response issues in terms of forensic handling, research, and also, but not monitoring online communication too. So they don't really have someone who are monitoring these people. So I think in terms of the regulatory trends in this area, what is needed is someone to actually come up and develop some sort of standards, because at the end of the day, you have to be proactive in this area rather than reactive. So to ensure that these online communication tools adhere or conform to some sort of privacy and data standards. Next slide, please. Now, the next theme that I want to talk about is delivery services. I think everyone here probably knows that delivery services are our second heroes during the movement control period. These people were booming, of course, on top of the doctors who are the frontliners out there. Every day you can read in the newspapers the growth and mushrooming of various delivery services players, and not only in terms of number, but also in terms of what they are doing. So they're not only delivering food, which they've been doing for the last 10 years or so, but now they're also delivering items. They're also going online to do groceries. They're also doing Ramadan Bazaar. So it's really widespread in terms of what they deliver. So if we talk about regulatory considerations in this area, I'm not sure whether many know that actually food delivery services in itself is actually under a proof of concept by the APAT, the Land Public Transport Agency. And this proof of concept is going to actually expire in June 2020. So the Land Public Transport Agency actually allowed it for a period of 6 months, but we don't know post June 2020 whether it would be extended or not. But during the movement control order, what was interesting is the government announced a P-hailing services sort of license, which was temporary to allow these operators to operate during this period, which we also expect to extend beyond. Because if we don't, if there is no legality in their operation, it does not only cover food, but it also covers delivery of items. So the P-hailing services license actually talks about safety measures, social distancing, and also wearing face masks and sanitizing. So there's also health measures introduced through the P-hailing license. Now, if we look at the regulatory trends in this area, what we see as emerging is, of course, we foresee that it will be extended given the significant growth in this area, like not only in terms of food, but in terms of various other areas. And we also see that another area that would be discussed is in relation to halal food delivery. I think halal food delivery is something a lot of people have started to speak about, and also in terms of food safety, because I think people are becoming more conscious now given the COVID-19 pandemic situation, to ensure that the food is kept in a proper and secure manner. So I think these things will come into light in the next few months. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide. So I just want to talk about the key takeaways. I know I covered a lot of issues very fleetingly. I think if you would like to discuss more, please drop us an email. If you'd like to collaborate, do let us know. We can explore all these themes in more detail. But given the situation that we are in right now, I think the first point is everyone is affected by movement control, irrespective of the size of your organization. I think most people would have seen a cartoon. I saw one recently, which basically says, we are not all in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm. So you could be in a cruiser ship, you could be in a yacht or whatever. So we're all facing, the same problem, but your level of resilience or tolerance is different. The second point here is the new norm means different things to different people. So what we should quickly do is to look at it from our perspective and see where we need to be. How do we need to change? What do we need to do to change? And where do we want to be after the new norm comes about? And the last point is, I think what I really want to say here is, yes, government funding is important. I think as we speak to startups and scale-ups, people always talk about money. We need money. We need money. And I think that's not peculiar to startups and scale-ups only. It goes for all businesses. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of players in the ecosystem who can help. I think the two gentlemen who will speak after me will talk about how their agencies do reskilling, how their agencies do upskilling, how the government is looking into regulatory sandbox to allow for innovation. So I think there's a lot of potential growth opportunities. If you have a good idea, the government will listen. And the last thing that I want to point out is the parting cartoon at the bottom, which says, as in the norm, an unexpected problem occurred today. So I think the message there, if we don't want to sit back and let the norm be accepting the fact that there is an unexpected problem. So the unexpected problem is something that is normal. We don't want that to be the case. We want to be ready to face the problem, and we want to be able to address the problem. So I think that's my last message. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Izaha. That was very interesting. For the benefit of the additional attendees who have just joined us, hello. Today's topic is regulatory threats and opportunities for startups and scale-ups post-movement control. So our partner Izaha has just discussed on the issues raised by startups during MCO and also the current regulatory trends. If you have any questions, you can post it at the Q&A box and we will answer it at the end of the session. So moving on to our second speaker, Yusni Rahmat. He's the Director of ASEAN Center of Entrepreneurship at Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center. I'm running out of breath, so I'm just going to call it MAGIC. The unit offers a comprehensive platform that provides startup support services for entrepreneurs to grow their business beyond borders. It is the first of its kind to provide such platform for Malaysian startups. So it also collaborates with multiple agencies and has a strong ASEAN startup community ecosystem. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Yusni.
Hi, Nick. Hi, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say thank you to ZICO and ZICO Lab for giving this opportunity for MAGIC to be part of this webinar. It's a great opportunity for us to be here, and I'm honored to be with these other two gentlemen who actually have vast knowledge in the ecosystem. But before I start, can I go to the next slide, please? The other one. Okay, so I'm not sure how many of you actually are aware about what MAGIC do and actually what actually our role in the ecosystem. Just to give a bit of overview. So MAGIC actually is founded back in 2014 by the Ministry of Finance, and we are now actually under Ministry of Science and Technology. So our role actually basically is actually to help the startup ecosystem in terms of capacity building. So that is actually our biggest role. So what we do mainly actually about program that we run. We have a lot of content. We have a lot of strategic how to actually help startup to grow their business. And when it comes to situation like now, the MCO, and also where a lot of business affected, it's not just within Malaysia, regionally, even globally, and a lot of government support has been put in place. Even for example, at the early stage of the MCO, the government actually mentioned about putting a lot of funding in terms of how actually replicate in terms of the process of getting market access. So one thing about startup ecosystem and the startup founder, they always have two things actually in common. They are looking for market access. They're looking for funding. So on that note, I think what I would like to actually touch base on actually in terms of where our role is as Magic. One of the biggest area that I mentioned just now is the capacity building in terms of a lot of make to do with mindset and about adopting the changes. If I can go to the next slide, please. So I just want to actually go straight forward to the point because I don't think I have much time here. So how to make sure that your startup or any startup actually are being able to actually sustain throughout this situation. Now a lot of businesses have been closed for months, and in fact a lot of sales has been reduced. But interestingly, there's also a lot of opportunity actually come into play. For example, this is actually part of the study has been done by McKinsey. Recovering revenue actually is one of the important part of startup to recover. What I mean by that actually, because even before MCO, a lot of startup already have a lot of customer base. I'm talking about startup, they already at the scale up and the growth, and this is where for any startup to actually start talking to all these startup, all these customer to be back into the revenue. And the best part is that I also talked to one of our startup founder at this MCO situation. Their sales team are a bit more creative, more innovative, where they start doing remote selling, and also and decision making are much very fast. One of the startup actually gave in a comment is that all this while their technical team who actually hardly talk to the customer, or even when it comes to the customer's meeting, they hardly present anything. But because it's during this MCO, these people are actually giving webinars, are giving pointers to their customers, and the number of customers that actually they capture are actually much bigger than the face-to-face customers sales that they've been doing all this while, which is very interesting. And another part actually is the rebuilding of the operation. I think Izhar mentioned just now about work from home, and everyone is still talking about work from home right now, and how actually they affected the entire ecosystem. Even some of the startup founder, they find that actually because two part actually how to make sure business is actually sustainable is either you generate more revenue or you actually minimize your costs. So a lot of actually startup actually at the moment in time, especially for a startup actually at early stage, they have no choice, but they have to actually, some of them have to cut their costs. They have to actually ask some of their team members, especially the key team members, to actually take a pay cut. But the best part is that when you talk about work from home, you actually reduce costs as well. So in terms of traveling, in terms of claims that that some of these the colleagues are making, so actually they can reduce a lot of things because automation is very important. So nowadays people are actually so used to work from home. Even like now, we're actually doing seminar. I'm sitting at home and sharing information, which normally when it comes to normal situation where we want to do program in Magic, one of the biggest challenge actually to find a meeting room. And for that, I want to start also when it comes to meetings, there are times meetings are overrun and just to make a small decision. But with new operation, new work from home, a new way of life, people are making decisions are much faster. And this actually, I have a statistic. When McKinsey make this study, and then they found out that a lot of decisions are made via phone call, via webinar, via web, where people actually are much more accurate in terms of giving their points and all that. So moving on, can I go to the next slide, please? And the second important part of startup ecosystem right now, actually the importance of actually know where you're coming from, where you stand. This is actually one thing that actually we always emphasize in any of our program. When startup actually, or even the startup founder, when they start up a business, what was the purpose of that? Either is it because of you are solving a problem, or is it because you're following a trend? Or is it because of you find that actually, oh, there's a potential of making money, and therefore you actually start an organization and start a business? But this is where, at this point in time, where a lot of competition actually are now struggling to make sure they are sustainable. And this is where the sense of identity, this important part, or actually sense of belonging, the culture between the business leaders and the employee, to understand that why the business exists at the first place. And a lot of customer actually can sense whether the business is genuine or not by actually having the conversation between the salespeople, between the team leaders, and this is where every organization need to set a clear goal, and then to have a very focus in terms of what actually they need to be achieved. So I would like to say in one situation, we had a conversation. I had a conversation with this startup founder, and he said all this while when he's around during the meeting or even the office, a lot of people doesn't give opinion, and at the end of the day he had to make all the call. But with these movement control orders, where a decision are made not by the decision makers, not by the leaders, but sometimes the task was given to the team, and the team start to take the honors, actually, the opportunity to become the team player. This is where organizations are start working, even though you are not working in one situation or one areas, but decisions are made everywhere. Everybody actually putting effort. Everybody are putting the make sure that the company actually is sustainable. And because now we're talking about whether the company is sustainable or not, because it depends on the manpower, the people. This is where the important part of actually having the organization to really look into it. And last but not least, this actually is tremendously, the statistic shows that all this while regulation will actually take like months or even weeks to making one decision or adopt any technology. But with this movement control order, and suddenly office are asked to to close for a very long time, and suddenly the adoption of digital, the adoption of technology are so fast. A lot of even the decision makers or team leaders which hardly use a platform or even have platform that have been purchased by the organization but not being utilized, now actually are fully utilized, and all this actually made because of people forced to. So the question now is that with all these changes and all these that new norms are happening right now for the last couple of weeks or coming to months, how does this thing to be sustainable? How can organization actually continue to make sure that that this situation can be replicate? I spoke to one of the startup founder. He said, you know what, Yusni, I realized that actually by splitting my team into a few units, now I'm thinking of actually how to continue the work from home, moving along, even after this MCO or after this COVID-19 situation, because he realized that that you don't have to have everyone in the office at all time. But you can still make things happen. You can still make things work, because if you give authority, you can give the support to the team to make the call, to make decision, and team take responsibility seriously. They actually can deliver, right? And this is where some decision making make it not based in just having the CEOs or your senior managers to be in a meeting room before you can make a call. Everyone can actually make the contribution back to the organization. That's a very interesting part. But moving forward, because again, the biggest challenge of most of the startup is because of, like I said, market access. And one of the things of market access, if you're talking about just confined into Malaysian market, we only have about 30 million population. So that is where organization like Magic and a unit that I heading, we also look into how we do collaboration beyond Malaysian market. If I could go to the next slide, please. So one thing that I've been doing since 2015, we have been creating a collaboration between Malaysia and ASEAN. And why actually I highlighted this is because you imagine now where before this, if they say you want to go beyond Malaysia market, you're always talking about setting up another organization, operation in other country, or even have to have team that actually like mobilize, internationally. We have been actually, opportunity to be work with a lot of organizations around the region. For the last couple of weeks, I can tell you, we have been, getting calls from a lot of partners from ASEAN countries, even all the way from Europe and US and Japan and Hong Kong, asking how we can do collaboration with less movement, a physical meeting and all that. So people are talking about now going digital beyond Malaysian market. And from that perspective, we in Magic are also looking at how we can do an immersion program that can be done on virtual basis. We have a lot of subject matter experts out there are willing to come in and give their input, insight, how to actually can handhold a certain startup organization to go beyond Malaysian market. By giving them all through digital. They're very interesting. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that if you can go to the next slide, please. If every startup or especially scale up, they're looking at a bigger picture. This movement control order or this COVID-19 situation, which actually impacted not just within Malaysia original, but it gives a lot of opportunity. It gives a lot of the way of us thinking about how do we do things much differently, how we can do it more efficiently, and how we can actually reduce costs. As I said, by how to make sure sustainability is not just about increase your revenue, but also being more efficient and reduce costs. And this is a small statistic that I'm trying to share is because if they say every one of us, especially the startup currently can look into ASEAN as a local market, and this is where we can support, we can help, because not just us, but every ASEAN countries that we have to partner with are talking about the same language. How can we build a resilient business where everyone can actually share opportunity, can share the pie, but with less cost. So that's the most important part. So I guess that's my last slide. So I would like to urge everyone who actually are listening right now. I think we have about 100 over attendees right now. I'm not sure who your background is, but you can go to last slide, please. I have my contact details there. Please keep in touch with us. Like I said, maybe some of you guys may not heard about Magic before. But this is what we do, this is what we mandate. Actually, we try to help startup ecosystem to build their business sustainably within Malaysia and also beyond. And thank you again to ZICO Lab and ZICO and giving us the opportunity. And hopefully we have more opportunity to work together with you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Yusni. That was very useful. I guess to summarize, Magic does magic to assist startups. You'll definitely be the first person I call if I want to set up my own company.
Looking forward to that.
My boss will kill me. So just to remind you again, if you have any questions, you can post it on the Q&A box and we'll answer it later. So moving on to our last speaker, the one and only Mahathir Aziz, the CEO of Futurise Center, an agency that champions the implementation of Industry 4.0 and facilitates the innovation, regulatory and commercialization programs. Futurise is a company wholly owned subsidiary of Cyberview Sdn Berhad under the Ministry of Finance that focuses on innovation and regulation. The company has been mandated by the Malaysian government to lead the National Regulatory Sandbox initiative to expedite the regulatory intervention and deploy innovation and technology solutions, as well as establish new innovation ecosystems. Without further ado, I will pass the mic to Mahathir.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me? I hope so. Very quickly, I think first of all, thank you to ZICO for having us and having myself together with Magic to actually share a bit in terms of trends on regulations and also opportunities for startups and scale-ups. I think what I can do is that some of the parts of the presentation will look and touch a bit on what we do and also what kind of opportunities that I think we can identify and also work together in the form of collaboration together with other agencies besides Futurise as well. So we like to actually think of ourselves as an enabler to shape the future of the country through this big initiative called the National Regulatory Sandbox. Next, please. So this generally is an initiative that was launched back in 2018, February 2018 actually. So we are about 2 years old. The idea of the National Regulatory Sandbox, again, the question normally would come to us, and how different is this compared to what we already have in the Bank Negara Malaysia, where we have the Financial Services Regulatory Sandbox. And as far as we are concerned, the scope is a bit different. That is looking entirely and exclusively at financial services, while the NRS looks at anything else outside of it. So again, over the course of the launch, we have gotten more than 100 submissions across 12 industries that ranges from transportation, healthcare. There is also a mixture of drone technology, which is part, could be safety, security, and also transportation as well. So that's the kind of mixture that we have managed to get input and feedback from the public on what needs to be done. So the launch of NRS was basically to source out input and to source out for feedback coming from the public on what the government should be looking at. So why I say this is that this will become something very important in terms of what Futurise does and where we see our collaboration with the rest of the stakeholders in the coming years. So for this year, 2020, we are looking very much into mobility and also sports technology, or sports tech for short. More on that as we go along. Next. Before we go into that, and we talked about where Futurise looks at this thing, mainly there are 3 things that we are looking at within what we call the future economy. So first being digital economy, and second we have the gig and sharing economy. Again, if you look at what we have today and the situation of MCO, conditional MCO, and also extended enhanced rather MCO, we have, besides the frontliners out there, we have the gig workers that is out there delivering business, delivering services, delivering things where typical businesses are just not ready or not equipped to actually do that. So again, this forms into one of the things that we will touch a bit more, both as an opportunity for startups and scale-ups, and also where we can look at regulations as well. The third part of the future economy covers circular economy. Similarly, I think one of the issues that we keep going and seeing was very much on recycling, waste management, and things like that. And we strongly believe that there's a business and an economy that can happen surrounding circular economy, where recycling, waste management, and now I think very much, again, I'm trying to relate to the situations. We are seeing that governments, people, and everything are throwing plastic everywhere because of the use of PPE, heavy use of PPE. So again, this plastic needs to be managed. There must be something that must be done with them. This is another part and possible area where we can look at as well. What is again supporting this very strongly is basically the outer ring that is a bit colorful there, which covers the industries that we have as a priority. Again, the list is not meant to be exhaustive, but it is meant to see how we can link the economy and also the industries out there, supported by things in the middle, which is very much the technologies enablers. Next. What we do in terms of Futurise itself, we do provide consultancy, we do provide facilitation in terms of implementing certain things. So National Regulatory Sandbox being the first big initiative that we have, and it continues to be a very critical initiative that we still run until today. And that covers where we have workshops that we run and organize together with the ecosystem players, the stakeholders, the regulators, and the likes. And then the facilitation of the discussion, and also the forming of possible sets of solutions that we can make use to implement to solve certain problems, issues, or even meet certain challenges. So within this, I think what Futurise does is that we look at a few things. The National Regulatory Sandbox initiative should be looking at how many interventions. So the focus should be in terms of what sort of interventions that we have done and what sort of testing or innovations that we can deploy in terms of testing not just the solution, but testing the regulation and the guideline and the policies as well. So again, literally looking at a set of sandbox where we can do this and form what would be the best formula that would be coming out in a form of solution. So this is again the two main things that we have. And third being, as a byproduct of this, we would have created ecosystems. People talk about ecosystems where we have the producer, the consumer, and also somebody that actually benefit from this. So again, while we do something like this, there's always something positive that will come out from it. One example that we can make use would be something that I'll show in the next slide. This is very much how we organize ourselves. Maybe we can go to the next one. A bit on the programs, yeah. On the top left, in terms of how we put our achievements and things like this, we have basically looked at the drone technology, not as an industry to begin with. It's basically as one possible solution to solve agriculture, asset management, for example, or even now during MCO, is for security and safety for the enforcement agencies like PDRM and also Army, to ensure that people comply and to also assess the level of compliance of the public to the control order that was issued. So the use of drones was merely as a warning and also for checking on compliance. And within this, if you look at this, what began as one typical technology that we look as a potential solution for one particular problems was discussed and looked at, and now suddenly we are getting different applications. We are coming up with different solutions for a particular industry. So you're looking at asset management, and asset management has gone into agriculture. I think companies, or rather organizations in Australia, for example, are using drones to cover large acres and acres of land, or rather hectares of land, to look at livestock, to look at how people count what they have from within. Whereas in Malaysia, we use that to count, say, palm trees and things like that. So again, where that particular ecosystem was created was that we are not looking at just the drone companies or drone services. We are looking at companies who can actually customize drones, both from a software perspective and also from a hardware perspective. Second, we're looking at the programmers, or the buzzword today is coders, that people can program both from how to actually manipulate the drones, from introducing another set of intelligence into the drones, and also third one, possibly the efficiency of the batteries that the drones are relying their power on. So again, this is another set of ecosystem that may not exist the day in the yesteryears, and suddenly existed because of certain challenges that we are trying to solve through the use of the technology of drones. And we haven't touched on the areas where the maintenance and the operations of drones. So you have the drone pilots, one of which are currently we have hosted in Futurise, together with our partner Polar Drone, to set up this Drone Academy Asia, where we certify through DJI endorsed curriculum for drone pilots. And then we have the drone operators and maintenance and repair. So that's another set of engineering that we have unlocked and enabled for something like this. So again, because of this one particular solution within drones is something that we see we have created one drone ecosystem that can grow and expand from there. Second part is on the autonomous vehicle, something that we are currently working with the Ministry of Transportation, where the first guideline has been created and to be tested within the vicinity of Cyberjaya at this moment. So at this moment, so the plan is to have that trialing and testing of autonomous vehicle to be happening on open road, rather than a confined space. That will be happening together with the support of police, JPJ, the local authorities in the form of MP Sepang, and besides that, the ministry overall, Ministry of Transportation as well. So again, it's not as simple as just testing this. I think that's the whole idea, is to understand what sort of signaling should we use for this autonomous vehicle. And again, the autonomous vehicle may come in the form of a car during the testing. But again, that can be expanded into buses, into shuttles, into even two-wheeler motorcycles and things like that. So we need to see how that is currently being tested. So that is, again, part of the sandboxing process that we have within this. What we are trying, and I mentioned earlier about seeking out the public's input, was very much on the open innovation platform. It is called Futurity as we launch it. I'm not too sure whether we have slides for that. Maybe you can look at next, otherwise I can talk through it. Okay. The open innovation platform called Futurity is something that we launched. We did a soft launch last year, which looks at offerings that people can put on. It's like a huge marketplace where we have companies, not just tech providers, but people who have solutions that can put their offerings on the platform. And then we do challenges that we can match the solution or offerings against those challenges. So you have another set of solution seekers, as you put there, where it can be coming from the private sector, the form of companies, large or small, or even governments as well. And then from there, what we needed to know is to look at areas where we can identify what would be the best solution that we are doing, and then looking at the trends, or in fact, setting the trends on trajectory on where we can go as a country, on what to focus on. Again, this is bringing it back to what we saw and learning from the experience from the launch of National Regulatory Sandbox. There are programs and projects, both operational and also developmental projects, that would have been announced by the government. Previously, we have, the Third National Car, Industry 4, and things like that. These are the huge programs and initiatives done by the government. But again, the people on the street or within specific sectors would have slightly different priorities. So what we are trying to allow is to liberalize that collaboration and ideas coming from the rest of the stakeholders, and not just from the government alone to dictate things like this. So Futurity essentially allows something like this to happen, and for the rest to also contribute, and not to just wait for handouts or projects coming through. If you have something, do come in, do offer, and we can actually look at that. Next, please. This is again one of another site that we are also doing at Futurise. It's basically on membership program. It is basically areas where we consider collaboration to have invested players. Again, when people look at it, oh, do I have to pay? It is a government-owned company. Why do I have to pay for something like this? I think the idea is that we want to be able to work with people who are invested in what we want to do, not just what they want to do, what everyone wants to do, to sit in and pay some minimal amount where we can enjoy not just the facilities, but access to the programs in terms of what we do and collaborative partners that we have within our state itself. So again, this is something that we look at in general at Futurise. So I think that's generally it. There's a next slide. No, okay. So in short, when we look at Futurise and also its key program, and its key program in terms of the National Regulatory Sandbox, and now with Futurity to be able to support that. We strongly believe that Futurity would be the main touch point for the public to be with Futurise, because I think you may have some ideas or you may have some problems. So you would come and highlight this to agencies, Magic, MDEC, Futurise, or whoever. But from Futurise's point of view, this is where we understand what you want to do. Some of them may touch certain changes that is required within technology, for example, and that is something that you can always cook up and discuss. But there's also another side of it that would touch regulations, changes and in policies, or adapt certain things that we already have into something that we are looking for, because then this new thing will take over the entire industry on its own. So that requires the national regulatory sandbox. So there's a difference of how we tackle this. There's always an approach for us to be able to do this. So essentially, that's it. Thanks. I hope if there are any questions, like I said, we do have an email there, hellofuture@futurise.com.my. You can always come to the office if you feel like going out. Otherwise, we are available online, reachable to look at some of those things. And Futurity platform and also NRS are open for submissions all year round right now. So do come check us out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mahathir. That was very informative. The Sandbox is such a great opportunity for emerging industry. So to wrap up, today we have learned so much about the issues raised by the startup, strategic goals post MCO, and also about national regulatory sandbox. We are so sorry, but we're running out of time. For those who have asked questions and we haven't answered it, we will follow up with you through email as long as you provide your name and also your email address. I see that some of the questions by anonymous. Don't be scared. We're not going to spam you. We will actually answer your question later by email. So just leave your email. Don't worry. Lawyers can be friendly too, you know. That's a joke. We're not friendly. And alternatively, if you're shy, you can connect directly to the speakers, Najib, and also from Futurise. So I would like to thank Izhar, Yusni, and Mahathir for preparing the slides and also sharing your insights. To all of the attendees, thank you so much for attending this webinar and actually focusing. You guys actually asked questions. I see that you guys didn't lose focus. I'm impressed. We hope that you enjoyed the session. Someone actually just asked about the slides. The presentation slides and recording of this webinar is available on our website together with more resources and latest alerts covering the 10 ASEAN countries at our COVID-19 resource hub on our website. So if you need any further details, you can go to our website and also our LinkedIn account. So I just want to promote on our next webinar. It is called Section 17A, What In-House Counsel Must Know About Malaysia's Corporate Liability Provisions and the Practical Steps to Comply. It will be next week on the 13th of May, next Wednesday, where the speakers will be discussing about the corporate liability provision in the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2009, which will come into force in less than a month. So the partners will discuss the key legal issues and practical pointers on compliance, which in-house counsel must know. If you're interested, do subscribe to our mailing list. Don't worry, we're not going to spam you. So you can also get other information, like I've mentioned earlier, on our LinkedIn account. Until then, take care and stay safe. Thank you for joining us and see you next time. Bye.